All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. You are back live and direct with your Akazaki Yahoo, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem once again to the Most High Power, Yahuwah Bahashem, Yahushua Hamashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel, all 12 tribes who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say, shalom wa baruki. That is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day that the Most High brings us back together, and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, and back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Joined this evening once again by my most esteemed Akinanaya. Shalom again, Aki.
Hey, shalom, shalom, Aki. Shalom, shalom, Yasharal. Kwam Yasharala.
Hallelujah. Quan, rise, Israel, rise. Hallelujah. All right, we're going to jump into this next segment real quick and easy, the video review. We have another video from Black Culture Unlocked, the Elaine Massacre of 1919. They tried to erase. We've covered this once before, different video, more information hopefully. And I pray you edified in this understanding. And to the Most High be the esteem. Here we go.
We are certain that a reign of terror against the black population of that part of Phillips County took place. We are certain that machine gun crews went out looking for people to gun down. Call that out for Mississippians to come to the rescue of the white men in Phillips County who were under severe attack. And so they jumped into cars and they jumped into trains. And at least according to the oral sources that I've talked to, they fired out of the windows at every black they saw. Women in the fields, it didn't matter. If it was black and moving, it was target practice.
The stench of the dead can be smelled from miles away. In the end, the remaining blacks caught will be arrested and arraigned for execution on account of the assault on their lives and the deaths of their loved ones.
The general reaction of the white establishment in Phillips County in the aftermath of the riot was a charge that was leveled against the black population, that they were in a secret conspiracy to rise up and to overthrow the white power structure and the landowning class in eastern Arkansas.
In the predominantly black town of Elaine, Arkansas, a dark and sinister event unfolded that would shake the community to its core forever. That September unholy night, filled with unearthly terror and bloodshed, continues to resound in the annals of history. It was the day where a group of white mobs had descended on the predominantly black town, leaving a trail of irrevocable damage in their wake. This would turn out to be one of the darkest chapters in America's history, one of the deadliest acts of racial violence in the early 20th century, known as the Elaine mass killing or the Elaine race riot. However, before we embark on this dark history, do not forget to support our channel's endeavor by hitting the thumbs up button. Share with friends and families to keep spreading our eye-opening black narratives, and consider subscribing if you haven't. All right then, let's dive in. The Elaine mass killing was by far the deadliest racial confrontation in Arkansas history and possibly the bloodiest racial conflict in the history of the United States. While its deepest roots lay in the state's commitment to white supremacy, the events in and around Elaine, Phillips County, stem from tense race relations and growing concerns about labor unions. A shooting incident that occurred at a meeting of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union escalated into mob violence on the part of the white people in Elaine and surrounding areas. Although the exact number is unknown, Estimates of the number of African Americans killed by whites in this outburst have ranged into the hundreds, thousands of others displaced. But first, let's take a brief look at life in Elaine before feeding you details on the chilling and heart-wrenching event that took place on that memorable night of 1919. Phillips County, which is located in the Arkansas Delta, had historically been developed for cotton plantations, and its land was worked by enslaved African Americans before the Civil War. In the early 20th century, the county's population was still predominantly Black, because most freedmen and their descendants had stayed on the land as illiterate farm workers and sharecroppers. African Americans outnumber whites in the area around Elaine by a 10-to-1 ratio and by 3-to-1 in the county overall. White landowners controlled the economy, selling cotton on their own schedule, running high-priced plantation stores where farmers had to buy seed and supplies, and settling accounts with sharecroppers in lump sums without listing items. In addition, sharecroppers worked the land for a small share of the crop and were forced to sell their cotton to the landowners, who paid less than market prices. Workers also had to buy food, clothing, household wares, tools, seed, and fertilizer at the plantation commissary, which charged exorbitant interest rates. It was a system intended to keep Black people in debt and dependent upon planters. The all-white legislature made the situation worse, as it had disenfranchised most Blacks and many poor whites in the 1890s by creating barriers to voter registration. It excluded them from the political system via the more complicated election law of 1891 and a poll tax amendment passed in 1892. The white-dominated legislature enacted Jim Crow laws that established racial segregation and institutionalized efforts to impose white supremacy.
My name is Asha Davis, and I'm an actor. I was born in Cogdell, Georgia in 1917, 2 years before the tragedy in Elaine. Yet, despite geographical differences, the world of rural Arkansas was not much different from the world of rural Georgia. Both were part of the South, then a region where Black people were segregated from whites by custom and law.
The decades around the turn of the century were the period of the highest rate of lynchings across the South. Asha Davis would go on to report that at the time, the cotton fields were the best place whites considered was for Black people. White planters needed cheap Black labor to grow and pick their cotton. Among the richest fields in the world are hundreds of thousands of square miles of land in the Arkansas Delta. The men and women who work the land are supposed to receive half the cotton crop in exchange for their labor, but many landlords would cheat them out of their rightful share. White landlords often underpaid sharecroppers for their crops and paid when they saw fit. Between the prices of goods purchased from the plantation store and the crop underpayments, many were kept in debt to their landlords.
The man would take your cotton, and then the man at the store, you had credit, he run the books up on you, so you didn't have nothing. You work a whole year and hand pick 40 bales of cotton and come out with nothing.
At the time of settlement, landowners generally never gave an itemized statement to Black sharecroppers of accounts owed, nor details of the money received for cotton and seed. The farmers were disadvantaged as many were illiterate. It was an unwritten law of the cotton country that the sharecroppers could not quit and leave a plantation until their debts were paid. Thus, the period of the year around account settlement was frequently the time of most lynchings of Black people throughout the South, especially if times were poor economically. At this time of 1919, it was summer. And strangely, there's been a fiery outbreak of racial violence which rippled across the entire United States like some raging force of darkness, which it obviously was. Therefore, by virtue of the season, mingled with the non-spatial unfolding chaos, it was called the Red Summer. The term Red Summer was coined by civil rights activist and author James Weldon Johnson, who had been employed as a field secretary by the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, 3 years earlier in 1916. In 1919, he organized peaceful protests against the racial violence. By this time, no less than 350 cities across the United States had been affected by this dark racial outbreak, where white supremacist terrorism and racial riots had continually unfolded. In Chicago, 23 whites and 15 Blacks are killed. In Washington, D.C., 4 whites and 2 Blacks. Whites are astounded that Blacks would dare to fight back. The anti-Black riots developed from a variety of post-World War I social tensions, generally related to the demobilization of both Black and white members of the United States Armed Forces following World War I. an economic slump, and increased competition in the job and housing markets between ethnic European Americans and African Americans. The time would also be marked by labor unrest, for which certain industrialists used Black people as strikebreakers, further inflaming the resentment of white workers. Going forward, many Black sharecroppers in Phillips County, whose cotton was sold in October 1918, did not as well get a settlement before July of the following year. They had amassed considerable debt at the plantation store before that time, as they had to buy supplies, including seed, to start the next season. However, in that remarkable year of 1919, Black farmers on this side of Elaine had begun to organize themselves in the endeavor to negotiate better conditions, including fair accounting and timely payment of monies due them by white landowners. Robert Lee Hill, a Black farmer from Winchester, Arkansas, had founded the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America, PFHUA, at this time. He worked with farmers throughout Phillips County, the main purpose being to obtain better payments for their cotton crops from the white plantation owners who dominated the area during the Jim Crow era. Whites would often try to disrupt such organizations and threaten farmers. The Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America retained a white law firm based in Little Rock to represent the Black farmers in getting fair settlements for their labors during the 1919 cotton harvest. The firm was headed by Ulysses S. Bratton, a native of Searcy County and former assistant federal district attorney. Now, to the heart-wrenching episode of the racial violence that unfolded. In the sweltering summer of 1919, tensions were already running high in Elaine. Launched on the backs of exploited Black labor, the town of Elaine, Arkansas, seethed with the pent-up fury of generations. The African-American community, fueled by the promise of equality and justice, had begun to organize and demand better working conditions and fair wages from white plantation owners. On that night of September 30, 1919, approximately 100 African Americans, mostly sharecroppers on the plantations of white landowners, attended a meeting of the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America at a church in Hoop Spur, Phillips County, 3 miles north of Elaine. The purpose of this meeting, which was one of several meetings by Black sharecroppers in the Elaine area during the previous months, was to obtain better payments for their cotton crops from the white plantation owners. The union had contracted with lawyer Ulysses S. Bratton, whose son, Osier, was at the meeting. In previous months, racial conflict had occurred in numerous cities in America, including Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, Knoxville, Tennessee, and Indianapolis, Indiana. With labor conflicts escalating throughout the country at the end of World War I, government and business interpreted the demands of labor increasingly as the work of foreign ideologies, such as Bolshevism, that threatened the foundation of the American economy. Thrown into this highly combustible mix was the return of Black soldiers to the United States, who often exhibited a less submissive attitude within the Jim Crow society around them. Unions such as the Progressive Farmers represented a threat not only to the tenet of white supremacy, but also to the basic concepts of capitalism. Although the United States was on the winning side of World War I, supporters of American capitalism found in communism a new threat to their security. With the success of the Russian Revolution, stopping the spread of international communism was seen as the duty of all loyal Americans. Arkansas Governor Charles Hillman Breaux told a St. Louis, Missouri audience during the war that there existed no twilight zone in American patriotism, and called Wisconsin Senator Robert La Follette, who opposed the war, a Bolshevik leader. During this Red Scare, the threat of Bolshevism seemed to be everywhere, not only in the labor strikes led by the radical industrial workers of the world, but also in the cotton fields of Arkansas. Thus, being aware of the risks they were taking, leaders of the Hoop Spur Union had placed armed guards around the church to prevent disruption of their meeting and intelligence gathering by white opponents. However, the white establishment would get wind of the ongoing meeting at this time, and seeing it as a threat to their power, they had responded with brute force, sparking a wave of violence that would last for days. At 11 p.m., a band of white men would shoot into the church. Black guards returned the fire, resulting in the killing of W.A. Adkins, a white security agent of the Missouri Pacific Railroad, and the wounding of Charles Pratt, Phillips County's white deputy sheriff. News of the shooting quickly reached the county seat of Helena. Soon, word would spread that blacks were attacking whites in Elaine. By early morning on October 1, the sheriff sent white veterans from the American Legion Post to suppress what he deemed as an insurrection. Calls went out to the governor for federal troops. Telephone lines to Elaine were cut. Throughout the day, at least 1,000 white vigilantes came from all over the state and from Mississippi to join plantation owners, their managers, sheriffs, deputies, and the veterans to put down what they had called an uprising. But it was effectively an invasion. By the day's end, countless black women, men, and children had been slaughtered. The following morning, Governor Charles H. Breaux of Arkansas and a World War I veteran, Colonel Isaac Jenks, personally escorted 583 soldiers, including a machine gun battalion, from Camp Pike in Little Rock, the state capital, to Elaine. Colonel Jenks sent all of the white women and children to Helena by train, ordered the immediate disarming of everyone, and authorized the killing of black insurgents who failed to disarm. Then the real mass killing began. For the next 5 days, Colonel Jenks and his troops, assisted by vigilantes, hunted black people over a 100-mile radius. They scorched and burned homes with families inside, slaughtered and tortured others. The troops were aided by 7 machine guns. At least 200 African Americans were killed, although the estimates run much higher, but there was never a full accounting. And the killing was indiscriminate, as men, women, and children unfortunate enough to be in the vicinity were slaughtered. And so, without sanctuary or refuge, black sharecroppers were left with few options. Many hid in the swamps and thickets. Others were said to have been gunned down in fields as they worked, and throngs of others surrendered themselves to the authorities for arrest. Amidst the violence, only 5 whites died. But for those deaths, someone would have to be held accountable. On October 7th, 1919, Colonel Jenks declared the insurrection over and withdrew his troops. He brought the men and women deemed insurrectionists to the Phillips County Jail in Helena. And guess who they were? Blacks. Blacks in unspeakable misery, who have just been rendered homeless as they had watched their homes go up in flames before their very frightened eyes. Blacks in mourning, who had lost their loved ones, watching them shot before their eyes. Some were burned, others raped and killed. These were the very ones who were called insurrectionists, arrested and thrown in jail. As a matter of fact, that was a treatment of mercy, to still have their lives with them regardless. Held in a makeshift jail, hundreds of blacks were detained until their participation in the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America could be verified. Those farmers who had not participated in the union were held until their landlords would arrive to vouch for and collect them. Those fortunate enough to leave the stockade, as the jail was also called, were given passes that they were to show on demand and were ordered to return to the fields for work. On October 31, a grand jury indicted 122 black men and women for offenses ranging from murder to night riding. The jury charged 12 black men with the capital murders of 3 white men and sentenced them to death, even though 2 of the deaths had occurred from white people accidentally shooting each other in the frenzy. The 12 men sentenced to death were Frank Moore, Frank Hicks, Ed Hicks, Joe Knox, Paul Hall, Ed Coleman, Alfred Banks, Ed Ware, William Wordlaw, Albert Giles, Joe Fox, and John Martin. The confessions of the black men had been secured through torture. Thus, black people were blamed, sentenced, and jailed for their own mass killing. The events that unfolded in Elaine, Arkansas in 1919 were not just a tragic loss of life, but a chilling display of racial violence and injustice. Local officials and businessmen conducted their own investigation of what had transpired in the Elaine area. They produced a predictable narrative that resembled those dating back to slavery. In their view, a deliberately planned insurrection had occurred where black sharecroppers had intended to murder the plantation owners to seize the land. The findings blamed outside agitators for stirring up ignorant sharecroppers. The committee's narrative appeared in newspapers all over the country. Colonel Jenks' report of his mission supported this view, claiming only 2 black people and one of his corporals had died. He praised his troops for their restraint in suppressing the rebellion. The official narrative presented a picture at odds with reality. But according to several accounts from white witnesses, both vigilantes and the troops committed acts of barbarism. A local school teacher saw 28 black people killed, their bodies thrown into a pit and burned, and 16 African Americans killed, their bodies hanging from a bridge outside of Helena. Still others described the barbarism of cutting off the ears or toes of dead Negroes for souvenirs and dragging their bodies through the streets of Elaine. Also, Gerald B. Lambert, the founder of Listerine, who owned 21,000 acres near Elaine, saw white men spread throughout the woods, firing at any suspicious person. He also told how soldiers brought a suspected Union leader to his company store for interrogation, poured kerosene over his body, and tossed a match. The account that best captured the perspective of the sharecroppers came from Ida Wells Barnett, the legendary anti-lynching crusader and journalist. She had been driven from her home in Memphis to Chicago because of her activism. One of the convicted 12 wrote to her from prison requesting help. Courageously, she dressed up as a sharecropper and went to Arkansas. There, she interviewed the 12 prisoners accused of murder, their wives, and many others, publishing her findings in a 1920 pamphlet. Miss Wells Barnett gathered testimonies that described the sheer horror of the mass killing from those who endured and lived to tell their stories. One Union member, Ed Ware, told her that men had fired into the Hoop Spur Church, killing several people, then burned it down the next day with bodies inside. When he returned home, 150 men came to ransack his house, seizing his Union meeting minutes and his Masonic Lodge books. As they surrounded his house, another man inside, Charlie Robinson, tried to run away. He was elderly and handicapped and ran too slowly. They shot him and left him to die. They stole Ware's cow, 2 mules, 1 horse, a farm wagon, his Ford car, and various household goods. He lost 121 acres of cotton and corn. Many families described how they had run into the woods for safety from bloodthirsty mobs, hoping to surrender themselves to the federal troops for safety. Instead, the troops either shot or arrested them. Vigilantes from Mississippi seized another Union member, Lula Black, and her 4 children from her house, knocked her down, pistol whipped and kicked her, then took her to jail. Carrying an axe with their guns, they then moved to another home where they murdered yet another Union member, Frances Hall. In a final act of disrespect, they tied her dress over her head and left her body on the side of the road for several days. 79-year-old Ed Coleman had remained at home with his wife when people fleeing Hoop Spur came to his house and warned them to leave. As they ran from the posse, the Coleman saw his neighbor, Jim Miller, and his family being burned alive in their house. After hiding for 2 days in the woods, the Colemans returned home to find dead bodies of women and children scattered about their community. Families of Union members found no welcomes when they returned to their homes. The wife of Frank Moore had hidden for 4 weeks. When she came back to her neighborhood, a plantation manager, Billy Archdale, told her if she did not leave, he would kill her, burn her up, and no one would know where she was. Most of those who survived found their homes emptied of possessions that appeared in white people's homes. Miss Wells Barnett provided hard evidence of the mass killing, but it took the Supreme Court to expose the truth to national attention. Furthermore, the mass killing and the sharecroppers sentenced to death also drew the attention of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. Through grassroots efforts, the NAACP built support for the sharecroppers dubbed the Elaine 12 and raised money for their legal counsel. It was in the defense of the Elaine 12 that Scipio Jones, one of the lawyers for the 12, rose to national acclaim. Scipio Jones and the NAACP's defense team worked to free the 12 defendants who were divided into the Moore versus Dempsey and Ware versus Dempsey cases. On February 19, 1923, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a 6-2 decision in favor of the Moore defendants, maintaining the 12 had been denied due process and noting the judicial proceedings had been influenced by a mob that had assembled outside of the courthouse before the men were sentenced. Despite the favorable ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court, the Moore defendants remained in jail facing a retrial in district court. On November 3, 1923, Governor McRae commuted the death sentences of the sharecroppers to 12-year terms in prison, making them immediately eligible for parole. On January 13, 1925, the 6 more defendants were granted indefinite furloughs from McRae and were released from jail. Although some local white residents of Phillips County still contend that white people at the time acted appropriately to prevent a slaughter in the Elaine area in 1919, the modern view of most historians of this crisis is that white mobs unjustifiably killed an undetermined number of African Americans. More controversial is the view that the military participated in the murder of blacks. Currently, race relations in this area of Arkansas are quite strained for a number of reasons, including the events of 1919. A conference on the matter held in Helena in the year 2000 resulted in no closure for the people of Phillips County. However, the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation provided a major funding for a 2002 documentary titled The Elaine Massacre, Tragedy and Triumph, which was distributed along with an informational booklet to every Arkansas school district. On September 29, 2019, a memorial to those who died during the massacre was dedicated in downtown Helena, West Helena. And on November 5, 2019, the Elaine 12 were memorialized on the Arkansas Civil Rights Heritage Trail in Little Rock. As sad as this seems, the Elaine mass killing was a tragic event that highlighted the deep-rooted racism and violence that plagued American society in the early 20th century. The brutal and senseless killings of African-American sharecroppers in Elaine, Arkansas, showcased the systemic oppression and discrimination faced by Black communities during this time. More so, the aftermath of the mass murder also revealed the power dynamics at play, with white authorities and media outlets working to suppress the truth and protect the perpetrators. The lack of accountability and justice for the victims further proves the need for a systemic change and strengthening of the ongoing fight for racial equality. That brings us to the end of yet another video segment. Did you happen to learn a thing or two? Share your thoughts.
Man, that does not get any easier to hear.
Right.
Even though we reviewed it, we reviewed a similar video before. It's not getting any easier. They mentioned bringing troops from Camp Pike. Camp Pike today is North Little Rock VA. That's what they moved the VA in North Little Rock to where Camp Pike is. So you can go there. They used to have, I don't know if they still do, but they used to have a inpatient treatment center for those dealing with addiction and things of that nature. And you can go there and potentially stay there for a time to help with addiction and counseling and things of that nature. That is horrendous. The idea that they would lock up so-called Black men for the sake of being attacked and blame them, that is so egregious. I can't help but think that if any of our people would have had an idea that that the last days were a thing, then they would have thought that we were in the last days a long time ago. Because it's been horrendous for us for a very long time. And it's gotten somewhat lax, somewhat more lax, but not better. Not better. It's so bad that mentally our people believe that our best resolution is right here in this captivity, much like they did in Mizraim in Egypt. They said we had it better in Egypt. We could eat. We had food. We could eat. We could bury our dead. Can't do that out here. And they didn't understand that you were a slave in Egypt. You were serving bondage in Egypt. Much like here, you're serving bondage. So, man, hard stuff, hard to take down and hard to deal with. But praises to the Abba. We're here, and we are patiently awaiting the return of the Messiah for our redemption. And I personally cannot wait until that day comes. I'm gonna leave it there. Go ahead, Art.
Hearing this, I don't even think this is our second time. I think it might be our second time covering a similar video about the same place, but I think we might have looked at something like this. This might be our third or fourth time, but you're right. It doesn't get any easier. I had forgotten that, the United States, military had assisted with the slaughtering of our people here. Kind of reminds me of what happened on what is it? Black Wall Street there in Tulsa. You know, it was reported at one point during that slaughter that maybe the local, what is it? Reserve unit was called up, and they had set up a Gatling gun up on a hill that pretty much they were just picking our people apart, you know, from the top of the hill, you know. So it's what that really reminds me of. You know, you had mentioned of, you know, how lackadaisical our people have become. I don't think you use those words, but you know, a lot of times this is really all our people know. And it's sad, you know, we have become conditioned. And, you know, you have also mentioned that, you know, perhaps things are, you know, not better, but not, you know, things are different. And I would agree. However, you know, the blood of our people still is being spilled, you know, and unfortunately now, you know, it's more Negro on Negro or Israelite on Israelite blood being shed. You know, I was talking to a loved one, and you know, this is how far away we've gotten from the scripts, because you know, if we stick with Torah, you know, this is life for us, but so far we've gotten away from it. You know, this loved one told me that they want their treasure in their heaven, or they want their treasure in their what they're due now. And I get it, but that's really counter what the scriptures say, you know. But you know, this person just doesn't know any better, and you know, we're to blame for that. You know, when I mean we as a people for forgetting our power, for not putting our power first. Everything we experience is a byproduct of that. You know, when I sin, I'm sinning against the Most High.
Right.
You know, this separates me from him. You know, and this will lead us into captivity, lead us, you know, a place that we don't want to be. You know, and that's away from him. But all praises to the Most High for, you know, all that he's doing and all that he's done and all that he will do. The word is being fulfilled, and you know, we sit patiently waiting on the return of our King and kinsman Redeemer. All praises to the Most High.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Praises to the Abba. You know, we'll go ahead and close out here. Join us tomorrow, Most High willing, where we will get into the reading, continuing in the book of Exodus, Shemot, where we will go through and you know, make things better with understanding through the text. So we'll do that tomorrow, probably around. Well, we'll probably do another video review, and then we'll probably get into that. So it'll be around 4:00. So join us for the video review we'll do tomorrow. I don't have one in mind, but I'm sure there's plenty for us to review. Shout out to the brothers, man. All the brothers doing the work, all the brothers keeping the way, all the brothers walking in righteousness. Shout out to the ladies, the sisters of Zion, the daughters of Zion, keeping the way, respectful to your husbands, raising the children, keeping the household. Shout out to you. Salute to everybody doing what's right. And to those of you who don't know or who don't do what's right, it's time to get with it. Time to get with it. You know, get your mind right. Get your mind correct. So with that, we're going to sign out. We'll close out with the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter number 12 and verse number 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It is so very important that we are to fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole commandments. Why? Akazaki Yahoo. Praises, honor, and great esteem unto the most Yeshua HaMashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say, Shalom wa Baruchi. That is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait till the day that the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High power, under one covenant, and back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone. Until that day come, shalom, family.
Shalom, shalom, Mr. Pakai.
All praises to the Abba. Hallelujah. I praise you, Abba Yah. Kimbo, glory to your name. Yeah, it don't get any easier, you know, and sometimes I ask myself, why do we torture ourselves with these hard videos? But, you know, we got to be abreast. To me, we got to be abreast of what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? It's not just a matter of, oh, well, you know, we're just going to do the easy thing. We're going to do what's easy. No, we got to do not necessarily what's easy. We got to do what's hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. There's 1,000 channels on YouTube. There's 1 million channels on YouTube, I should say. And how many of them are talking about important stuff? You know what I'm saying? So we're going to cover content. We're going to cover important content. And that's what it's going to be. So.
Indeed. And, you know, all praises for all the bodies that and all the brothers out doing the work, you know. We're all a part of that same body, you know, different members, you know, but one body.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I was trying to convey. I might not have said it as eloquent as you just did, but yeah. I pray, man, you know, our brothers appreciate it. And some of my designations had an error. How my designation?
You know, it keeps on going in and out. It just started like